G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to Star Citizen with Mags, and today we'll be taking a quick look at the Anvil F7C-M Super Hornet. The Super Hornet is a two-man space superiority fighter and an upgraded version of the standard single-seater F7 Hornet. Its notable upgrades over the standard Hornet model include the attached unmanned ball turret that operates as a gimbal for the pilot, and a second seat that splits the combat load between two people. The version available to players in Star Citizen is a match for the military version likely to appear in Squadron 42 in terms of flight capability, but is armed with civilian spec weaponry. It features 8 TR2 maneuvering thrusters and a single TR4 primary engine powered by a size 4 power plant. Armaments include a gimbal capable of taking 2 size 4 weapons but loaded stock with 2 size 2 bearing M4A laser cannons, 2 size 1 pylon mounts each holding 4 size 1 Stalker infrared missiles, and an unmanned turret capable of holding 2 size 1 weapons and armed by default with 2 CF007 Bulldog repeaters. The Super Hornet is also equipped with a respectable size 4 shield system. It represents one of the most powerfully armed and defended fighter platforms available to the players of Star Citizen, and in my opinion it's a pretty good looking ship as well. So today, for something different, we won't be taking the Super Hornet out into Star System's miniature persistent universe, but we'll be jumping over to Arena Commander for a round of co-op Vandal Swarm, or at least it was meant to be co-op. The Vandal Swarm arena consists of wave-based combat. Players are given a maximum of 2 respawns and no ability to re-armor or repair, or at least none that I have found. The Vandal are a hostile alien race within Star Citizen lore and have their own unique ships that tend to be fast, manoeuvrable, and include blade-like wings designed for ramming hostile spacecraft. The design is very reminiscent of the fighters flown by the Kilrathi from the old Wing Commander series of games, also designed by Chris Roberts. So, I'm back to using mouse and keyboard for combat for the moment. I was experimenting with dual sticks for most of patch 2.5, and while I found flying the ships and manoeuvring was fantastic with the twin stick setup, the X55 Rhino flight stick I was using for main flight controls and the Logitech 3D Pro I was using in my left hand for thruster control was simply not sensitive enough for accurate shooting at the speed that Star Citizen's battles take place. At the moment I'm looking into dual Thrustmaster T16Ks as potential replacements. Anyways, the long endurance combat of Vandal Swarm gives me the opportunity to explain how space dogfighting in the Star Citizen universe works. Essentially, there are 2 flight modes you want to be looking at in combat, coupled and decoupled. The standard flight mode is coupled. In this mode, the ship you are flying's thrusters are slave to the ship's flight computer and work in unison to keep the ship always pointed and moving in the direction of travel indicated by the pilot. It creates a flight envelope not unlike that of an aircraft flying in atmosphere, but with the ability to strafe by taking manual control of your maneuvering thrusters, or maybe better described as a sort of standard sci-fi sort of flight dynamic. This mode also works with 2 other flight control systems, G-Safe and ComStab. G-Safe prevents your ship from pulling Gs to the point of blacking out the pilot, and ComStab prevents your ship from sliding during rapid changes of direction. These 2 secondary options can be toggled on and off, but are usually left in the default settings. The second flight mode is decoupled. Decoupled mode, well, it decouples your flight computer from your thrusters and shuts down your main engine. This is essentially Newtonian physics combat mode. When decoupled, the player must control their ship's own movement directly by using the maneuvering thrusters and are able to fly in any direction independent of the direction the ship is facing. Or put simply, it allows you to fly backwards or sideways or whatever direction you choose, while still allowing you to keep your forward-facing armament focused on the target. I'll just pause the fight here and mark the locations of each of these systems on the HUD. When each of these systems are disabled, their name is marked with an X. Now, while I don't claim to be a fantastic pilot in Star Citizen by any stretch, merely a passable one, so do keep that in mind, I personally like to fly with G-Safe off, but ComStab on, and will constantly decouple and recouple the flight computer in battle, using decoupled for engaging targets while using the thrusters and maneuvering, and switching to coupled mode to stabilise my flight if in a dangerous situation, or when transferring between targets. I do believe there is no best combination in regards to these settings, but the settings used and the way they are used will depend heavily on the preferences of the pilot, and in many cases even the ship being flown at the time. Another thing you may notice from time to time is a small green box that moves around the screen and off the side of the screen, often quite rapidly. This is the direction of travel indicator. It lets you know the vector your ship is on while manoeuvring. It's less important in coupled mode as it should always be in the centre or close to the centre of the screen, but when decoupled in space where you'll often have no point of reference for your exact direction of movement, it becomes important to keep an eye on. So from here, let's talk about Star Citizen's physics. As I mentioned before, when decoupled, your ship will respond to Newtonian physics with the sole exception of maximum speed. Maximum speed will vary from ship to ship and is forcibly limited for gameplay reasons. However, these same physics are in effect when in coupled mode. Being coupled simply allows the ship to largely ignore them by constant usage of thrusters. This becomes most evident when your ship has taken damage. Ships in Star Citizen are divided into several parts which can be damaged or destroyed. These parts are often not simply structural parts, but may contain ship systems such as engines or maneuvering thrusters. Should these parts be destroyed, your ship may lose control even in coupled mode. For example, in an earlier round of Vanduul Swarm before this one I flew out my Vanguard Warden. The Vanguard is a large heavy fighter with dual engine layout, but is rather vulnerable to damage. During combat I took critical damage to the left hand side that destroyed the thrusters responsible for countering left hand drift. This resulted in an uncontrollable slide to the left hand side which the flight computer was unable to counter. To correct this slide I was forced to roll the spacecraft 180 degrees and fire the thrusters on the right hand side of the ship to regain forward movement. Changing between coupled and decoupled mode does not change between different flight models, but instead actually has your ship's computer actively use the ship's thrusters within the physics environment. There's no cheating in Star Citizen systems. This is also why when shooting at a spacecraft mid-maneuver you may see the ship suddenly and rapidly spin out of control. This is because you have destroyed the thrusters the ship had in use to maintain stable flight, and this level of modelling is true of both player ships and AI. Another situation that can occur is in ships with more than one engine that fire off the ship's centre of mass. While the Hornet is largely immune to this, having a single main drive engine, ships like the Vanguard with two or more engines can find themselves unable to maintain forward flight in situations where one engine has been damaged or destroyed. Usually in this situation the ship in question will begin a constant yaw to the left or right, depending on what engine has been destroyed, or in some cases can also enter an uncontrolled rotation. So I think that covers the basics of combat and the physics involved, so let's get back to the Vanduul Swarm and the Super Hornet. As I said earlier, this battle was meant to be co-op multiplayer, with the matchmaker finding a group of other players to assist in taking on the waves of Vanduul. However, for some reason partway through the first wave, the other players that joined the battle all disconnected, leaving me to fight the waves alone. The Vanduul Swarm groups fighters into waves of 3, with the first 2 waves consisting of ever stronger and more numerous groups of fighters, and every third wave consisting of a boss. This boss is generally a named Vanduul, whose ship can be significantly more resistant to damage, faster and more manoeuvrable, or have more powerful weapons, or any combination of the above. In my experience, boss fighters also tend to be a more aggressive AI. As the Vanduul Swarm co-op is intended to be flown by multiple players, this proved to be a really good test for my first time flying the Super Hornet. I managed to make it to wave 15 before my ship's third respawn was destroyed while flying solo, which I didn't think was too bad for a mediocre pilot flying a new ship for the first time. Even with the stock loadout of Size 1 and Size 2 energy weapons, I found the forward firepower to be exceptional, and I can see how players rearming their Super Hornets with Size 4 cannons would make for an incredibly dangerous weapons platform. In terms of defense, it is honestly the most durable fighter I've ever flown in Star Citizen, significantly stronger than the Vanguard in terms of damage resistance, and this comes down to its massive Size 4 shield generator, which as far as I'm aware is the largest on any space superiority fighter currently in the game, with the Vanguard only featuring a Size 2 shield. As much as I love Aegis designs, I think if I was still looking for a new fighter, I would have to put the Super Hornet on the shortlist. It's an impressive ship. So to wrap this up, as this is the first time I've shown the Vanduul Swarm part of Arena Commander, I'm sure many of you are wondering if that's all there is to this, just wave-based dogfighting. Well, yes and no. Combat-wise, yes, it is just a combat arena featuring waves of enemies in a long, intense battle, with the 15 waves I survived in this particular battle totaling a little over 30 minutes of solid combat, which in itself is fantastic. The PU for playing around and the arena for instant action fights. But there is also a leaderboard on Arena Commander battles, so you have the opportunity for bragging rights should you do well, and more importantly, there is also a reward. Completing more and higher difficulty waves and destroying hostile fighters in the swarm earns you an in-game currency called REC. This currency can be used on the RSI website to rent in-game items via the electronic access section of the store. In-game items include ship systems, weapons, and even ships, allowing you to custom fit loadouts on your ship or rent new ships that you would like to test. These rentals can be used in Arena Commander or in the Miniature Persistent Universe and last for 1 week. The costing is also rather low, so it's not much of a grind. In the 3 rounds of Arena Commander that I flew today, I was able to earn just over 4,000 REC, with a 1-week rental of an Aegis Saber costing around 17,000 REC, making it possible to earn enough currency to rent one of the best fighters in the game for a week in just an afternoon. Weapon systems are significantly cheaper, with the most powerful and expensive weapon in the store, the new Class 5 M7A laser cannon, only costing 2,400 REC for those with a ship that can mount it. So it's a nice way to practice your skills while being able to unlock some new stuff to play with, should you choose to. Anyways, ladies and gents, it's time to bring this one to a close. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you very much for watching. Remember to leave a comment in the comment section down below. I love to hear what you guys think. And remember to like and subscribe to the channel if you do and you would like to see more of these kind of videos. Until next time, fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the verse.
Elite units en route.
Scanning. Bogey. Bogey. Propulsion low.